Hey everyone, so in this video I'll be showing you what to do with your starter motor when it gets stuck in the morning and it makes that grinding noise. So when it doesn't disengage fully from the flywheel. I've seen a lot of people replace the starter motors, but realistically if you have a manual car like this Euro R here, what happens is the actual clutch dust from the actual friction material from the clutch goes into the actual starter motor, and it causes the actual pinion to bind so it doesn't release when you start the car. When you put off, so when you're holding it on ignition on start, and then when you release it, what happens is that pinion should fly back from the starter motor and it shouldn't overrun on the flywheel, but that's exactly what's happening here. So I'll show you how to take out the starter motor and I'll show you how to fix that problem. So coming here to the front of this engine, this being the K20, it's got this single piece manifold. It's not like the 2.4 liter engines, which I'll show you later. So with this one here, you can actually get away and pull out the starter motor without taking out the intake manifold. It's a bit more difficult, but it can be done. See the sensor here, there? Be very careful, that's a knock sensor. You don't want to break that when you're trying to get to that bolt at the back of the starter motor. So all we'll do is take off that one there. Now that we identified the bolts, at this point, if you got any code stored on your radio, make sure you get that, because we'll be disconnecting the battery to prevent any short circuits, because that is a positive live on that solenoid over there. So disconnect the battery and we'll move on to removing the starter motor. Give me a bit more room to show you what I'm doing there at the starter motor. I'll be taking off this expansion bottle here. It's held in by one 10mm bolt here and another one here. So when I refer to 10mm, it's the actual socket size that you need. So if you hear me referring to a particular size, that's usually the head size of the bolt. Next, we want to go ahead and disconnect all the connectors over there. So that knock sensor, all the electrical connectors, just get as much as you can out of the way. As I was just telling you before, be careful of the knock sensor. Well, you just saw it broke there. You can't help it because it gets brittle over time. So if you actually look at the plastic here, it was already brittle. So it's just one of those things. Due to vibrations and heat, it does get a bit old, so this has to be replaced now anyway. Anyway, so we'll continue on to the starter motor and we'll have to replace that sensor now as well. So using a 24mm socket, you can actually use that and a short 1/4 inch extension and a short extension. So that's what the knock sensor looks like. It's the other broken half now. So that's a 12mm bolt, 12mm nut over there. To take that off, and you need to pull. That connector out there. So that connector is removed. You can see the bolt there at the back. And we just got this 12mm to remove next. So we got that bolt out. So we just got that 14. Now we just have that 14mm bolt over there and one more down there which I showed you before. I'll take that off and then I'll come back to you. So now that we've got the starter motor here, we can examine it and see all the dust and the grease that's basically gotten hard over time. Like I was saying, a lot of the clutch dust comes in here and it actually goes into the starter motor near the pinion. So what we have to do is clean this up and re-grease the whole system. And you also at this point want to check if your teeth are excessively worn on your gear here. You might want to change it. Or if it's simpler, most of the time it's more cost effective just to replace the whole starter motor. And they normally take this and they remanufacture it. So if that's easy for you, you can go ahead and do that. But this one's okay, so we'll just give it a quick refresh. So you want to start by pulling off here, these two bolts here, and you want to pull off the solenoid. In order to do that, you got to remove this bolt here at the back, the nut at the back there, that's the positive. So you want to split and remove the solenoid, and then we'll get onto the motor. Be careful while pulling it out. Note if any spring or anything pops out of your particular one, if you're doing this on another type of starter motor. just like that. We pulled it out. There was a rubber seal here, and that's the little fork that's over there. We'll see that when we get to it. So just for reference, that's what that looks like. So keep this in a safe location. Now the next step is to open these two bolts here. So for reference, if you need to know, you need a 10mm, 12mm and an 8mm socket set. That'll suffice to open nearly all the bolts and nuts. What I like to do is something I should have shown you earlier. We'll mark this before taking it out. Just mark it. Also mark the bolt. Mark one side, because sometimes they can be different. It's always good practice. Pull that bolt out. Pull the bottom bolt out. Get in a safe location. Now be very careful when removing the motor. Watch for any gears that might drop. Plates, note the orientation. That's the orientation of the motor. So always just make sure you take notes. Just keep marking. This is your main pinion drive system. It's your gear drive. These gears will fall out, so take note of them. Carefully take out everything. And now we're basically stripped the starter motor bare. Look at all that dust on there. So we want to give all of that a good clean. Notice the orientation of the fork I was talking about. This is where the solenoid goes in and it pushes and pulls onto the actual pinion, which I'll get to shortly. So note the orientation. Okay. So now this is that pinion we were talking about. We'll just give everything a good clean, re-grease the whole setup. We just want minimum amount of grease in here, because brake dust will, clutch dust will go here and will seize it up again if you put too much. So we'll give it a good clean and we'll come back to the video. So what I like to do is just use a cloth to wipe everything down and just give it a good clean. So it's basic stuff, I won't cover all that. I won't waste your time. I'll skip to the reassembly part. Another thing worth mentioning is if you come this far, it might be worth just to actually take out the two bolts here and actually inspect your brush pack. I might as well show you that since we're here. So you want to grab your Phillips screwdriver or Phillips driver, and we want to just take that off there. Again, if this is the first time you're doing something like this, be very methodical and be organized. Just saves you a lot of hassle later on. So be careful as well here. If you pull this out from here, the brush pack can be a little bit difficult to reseat. So just be careful. You need compressed air and give this a good clean. Usually would suffice, but we'll give it a clean and then I'll come back and inspect the brushes and I'll report back as to the condition. What do you want me to do? I'll come outside. This pinion, it should only spin one way. It should never spin the other way. If it spins the other way, then you have to replace this pinion or replace the whole starter motor. So I didn't show you this part, my camera died, but basically there's a circlip here that you pop out. So there's one of these clamps here. You'll see it when I'm reassembling. This basically goes over the circlip. You have to tap this down and then push the circlip out, and you can pull out the whole pinion, and you can give this whole shaft a good clean and lightly grease it here and over here. Just want to lightly grease it. You don't want to excessively grease it. That's a key for anything clutch or gearbox related. If there's clutch dust or similar, even when you're doing your release bearing, when you're changing your clutch, you want the minimal amount of grease in there. Yep, that's good. That's good enough. So we'll start with this. This is the protector ring. Pop that in there, then we'll put the circle back in there. Wait, what you do is, That's automatic. That's automatic. You took the bell out. Because you would have taken it. You want to come? exposed points, just put a little bit of grease. Don't want too much. You saw me how I greased the gears. That's done. So that's the motor part done. Now we have to get onto the little plastic fork over here. Just lightly grease it. Remember, the key is to lightly grease everything. Don't excessively grease. This is plastic after all as well, so it is a sacrificial part. In there as well, we'll put a tad bit of grease on the end of the shaft here. Don't forget your boot as well. This goes there like so, and that goes in there. Just like that. Okay, so that's the dry assembly, just to give you a good idea. Now we'll put it here. Test it, make sure you push this here and make sure the gear moves. It should move nice and freely after all that work. Put the rubber cap back in there. Slot the bolts how you marked it. Make sure all your marks line up how you originally marked it. That's the part number in case you need to replace it. Usually when it comes back to reassembly, I only like to use hand tools because you don't want to over torque these bolts. Yep, that's done. The solenoid, there's a little bit of a trick. You want to, with the boot removed, you can see it a bit better, hopefully. So you want to take this slot in there and just slide it and put it down in there. So if it's any easier, put it like that. Test it. When you pull the solenoid, it should engage like so. Don't forget to put your solenoid positive back in there, and the little nut that goes there as well. Double check your workbench and make sure you're not forgotten any parts. If you want to be certain about the torque settings, what you can do is, if you don't have access to a menu, just mark the bolts before taking out. Put a couple of marks at the top here so you know which one's this one and this one, and then when you tighten it, you can just tighten it back to specs. But I've done a few of these, so I am quite familiar with how tight they should be. Done. So now we'll bench test it before taking it out and putting it back in the vehicle. It's always a good idea. So the last thing you want to do is put everything back together and then realize something's not working. So we'll do a quick bench test. I'll show you how to do that. There's a more detailed version. I put up a video sometime back. I'll put a link in the description so you can have a look at that. But we'll quickly bench test this and go from there. So we got the positive and negative connected, and now we just need to jump that isolator switch, which is down somewhere to where. I'll hold it down. You just touch the positive at the top. Just wait. You touch the positive when I say. Yep. Yep, so it's nice and smooth. So now that we're done with the starter motor refresh, let's go ahead and reinstall it. Everything's simple, just reverse of removal. Slot this in there and put the bolts back. And we have to get a new knock sensor, as you saw earlier in the video. So I'll make another video on that, and I'll put a link in the description. So thanks for watching, everyone. I hope this was of some help to you. If it was, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more interesting content to come in the near future. See ya. And now you heard the starter motor worked perfectly. There was no binding issues or anything. Started up fine and it released perfectly fine. So that's how you repair your starter motor on a Honda. It applies to most Hondas, but like I said, we'll go next, or maybe I'll put up some pictures and I'll show you what the split manifold design is on K24s and some of the other K20s.